In the thriving universe of Tensura, Rimuru Tempest reigns supreme over a plethora of subordinates, with talents as varied as they are impressive. If some of them, such as walking cataclysms, crush their adversaries with raw power worthy of legends, others shine through more subtle skills, shaped by years of discipline and mastery. Among these exceptional figures, Hakurou, the master swordsman, stands out not by an immeasurable magical energy, but by an unequaled expertise in the art of the sword. His blades dance with deadly precision, and his encyclopedic knowledge makes him a legend in his own right. Today, we dive into the heart of the story of this fascinating character, exploring his past, his refined techniques, and the real extent of his power. If this immersion in the universe of Tensura captivates you, do not hesitate to support this exploration by liking the video and subscribing for other analyses as detailed. Before becoming one of the pillars of the nation of Rimuru, Hakurou was an eminent member of an ogre village nestled in the heart of the great forest of Jura. In this isolated community, he was not only the most formidable of fencers, but also the guardian of martial traditions, charged with transmitting a combat art forged by centuries of history. His role as principal instructor was not limited to teaching movements. He embodied the very spirit of the sword, guiding his students with a rigor almost monastic. But to fully understand the depth of his talent, it is necessary to go back to the origins of his village and its techniques, because the history of Hakurou is inseparable from that of his people. There are about 400 years, the ogres of this village were far from the refined image that they project under the aegis of Rimuru. At that time, they embodied the archetype of wild monsters, living off pillages and raw instincts in the wild depths of the forest. Their destiny tipped when a group of wounded warriors, wandering and at the end of their strength, found refuge in their enclave. Against all odds, the ogres, guided by a code of honor forbidding to strike weakened adversaries, chose to welcome them rather than to massacre them. This gesture of compassion marked a decisive turning point. As a token of gratitude, the warriors, who turned out to be otherworlders, beings come from another world, shared their knowledge. They initiated the ogres into the art of forging, teaching them to shape weapons and armors of unequaled quality. More still, they transmitted to them sophisticated combat techniques, imbued with a martial philosophy that was going to transform forever the ogre culture. It is from this improbable encounter that was born the East Asian-inspired aesthetic that characterizes the ogres of the great forest of Jura. The armors with delicate motifs, the finely wrought katanas, and the sword techniques, fluid like a deadly dance, all that stems from the heritage of the otherworlders. Among these foreigners, one man particularly stood out: Byakuya Araki, the grandfather and master of Hakurou. Araki was not a simple warrior. He was a visionary, a master of arms whose blade seemed to whisper ancient secrets. Founder of the Oboro style, he laid the foundations of a martial art that was going to become the pride of the ogres. This style, at once graceful and implacable, rests on a perfect harmony between the body, the mind, and the sword, transforming each confrontation into a deadly work of art. A precision is necessary here because the volumes of the light novel sometimes lend to confusion. In volume 15, Hakurou evokes a style named Mizuru as being the one that his grandfather taught him. However, in volume 18, this same style is designated under the name of Oboro style. Is it a narrative inconsistency or a subtlety of translation? But it is indeed the Oboro style, such as it appears in volume 18. The Oboro style distinguishes itself by 4 main techniques, each bearing the mark of the precision and philosophy of Araki. These techniques, transmitted from master to student, are not simple movements. They are jealously guarded secrets, reserved for a hand-picked elite. The first Gokototsu, the 5 striking flowers, is a perforation technique of surgical precision. It targets the vital points of the human body with lightning rapidity, each thrust being calculated to inflict a maximum of damage in a minimum of time. Only the most talented initiates have the privilege of learning this technique, because its mastery demands an intimate understanding of anatomy and a perfect coordination. Next, the technique Zakuro, also called Rokuzan, the 6 mountainous cuts, privileges speed over lethality. This series of slashing blows, executed at a prodigious speed, is designed to neutralize an adversary without killing him. Each slash is a lightning bolt, leaving behind superficial but incapacitating incisions, ideal for disarming or intimidating without shedding blood unnecessarily. Then comes Yanagi, or Nananagi, the 7 willows, a defensive technique of rare elegance. Inspired by the suppleness of willow branches bending under the wind, it allows to parry enemy assaults with a disconcerting fluidity, transforming the force of the adversary against himself. Finally, at the summit of the Oboro-ryu, thrones Yayazakura, the flash of the 8 flowers, the supreme technique, reserved for the master alone. This devastating sequence combines slashing and piercing blows in a complex choreography, striking the enemy from unpredictable angles. Each movement is an explosion of precision, a whirlwind of steel that overwhelms the adversary under a rain of attacks. Only those judged worthy by the master, a decision as rare as a divine verdict, can hope to learn this technique which embodies the very essence of the Oboro-ryu. Hakurou, in the image of his grandfather, has attained an absolute mastery of this art. Well before receiving a name from Rimuru, he was already a legend among the ogres, nicknamed the Ogre Swordsman, or more rarely, the Demon Swordsman. His reputation resounded beyond the borders of the forest, carried by tales of duels where his blade seemed to defy the laws of time. But this glory was overshadowed by a tragedy. The village of Hakurou, once a haven of culture and discipline, was ravaged by a horde of rampaging orcs. In this carnage, almost all the ogres perished, their homes reduced to ashes. Hakurou, despite his prowess, could not prevent the massacre. Gravely wounded, he managed to escape with 5 other survivors, wandering in the forest, gnawed by grief and guilt. It is in this forced exile that the destiny of Hakurou crossed that of Rimuru. While he was fleeing, the ogres fell upon Gobuta and a band of hobgoblins. Although these latter were far from being adversaries to their measure, the skirmish attracted the attention of Rimuru, who intervened to protect his allies. Facing the 3 weakest ogres, Rimuru demonstrated a crushing power, neutralizing them without effort. Only Hakurou and Benimaru, still without names at that moment, held their own against the slime with inoffensive appearances. This combat, although brief, revealed the extent of the genius of Hakurou. From the first exchanges, Hakurou demonstrated an out-of-the-ordinary perspicacity. By observing Rimuru, he instantly deciphered the nature of the skills that the latter had acquired via his unique skill Predator. More impressive still, he detected the presence of magic sense, a skill allowing Rimuru to perceive his environment with a supernatural acuity, simply by analyzing his movements. But Hakurou did not stop there. While Benimaru occupied Rimuru, he used an occultation technique to conceal his presence, escaping even from the magic sense ability of Rimuru. In a flash he struck, his blade slicing the right arm of Rimuru, yet protected by a multi-layer barrier and a body armor. This feat, rare in the series, makes Hakurou one of the only fighters to have inflicted visible damage on Rimuru, an eloquent testimony to his dangerousness. However, when Rimuru revealed his true power, deploying a crushing aura, Hakurou and Benimaru understood that they had no chance. Rather than prolonging a combat lost in advance, they laid down their arms. This moment of surrender was not a defeat, but the beginning of an alliance. After having dissipated the misunderstanding, the ogres initially believed that Rimuru was linked to the destruction of their village. Rimuru invited them to join his nascent village. During a memorable feast, he offered the ogres a new departure, sealing their loyalty by a rare act of generosity. He gave them names. This naming ritual, far from being trivial, triggered a spectacular transformation. Hakurou, formerly an old ogre marked by the years, regained a youthful vigor, his appearance evolving towards that of a man in the flower of the age. From simple ogre, he became a Kijin, a superior race endowed with a power and an increased longevity. More remarkable still, despite a magical level classified at the rank of Hazard class, Hakurou attained the rank of Calamity class. This prowess, rare even among the Kijin, rests on his mastery of the arts. techniques that transcend raw magic. Unlike spells, which demand incantations, or skills, which can be acquired by supernatural means, the arts demand a rigorous training and an iron discipline. They rest on the manipulation of the innate aura of the fighter, sometimes reinforced by a touch of magical energy. This approach, at once physical and spiritual, confers on Hakurou a unique versatility. Among his arts, battle will allows him to channel his energy into a combative aura, reinforcing his body for superhuman physical prowess. Deadly Will, an offensive variant, transforms this aura into magical projectile or into energy bubble, capable of integrating skill or spell effects for devastating results. Hakurou excels also in the art of concealment, which allows him to mask totally his presence, becoming undetectable even for the most sharpened senses. An advanced version haze pushes this furtivity to its paroxysm. In several steps, Hakurou eliminates first all sound, his steps become lighter than the air, then he effaces his odor, neutralizing the olfactory trackers. He dissimulates next his body temperature, blending into the environment. Finally, he eradicates totally his aura and his spirit, becoming an imperceptible ghost, even for magic sense. It is this technique that he used against Rimuru, taking him by surprise. Only instincts sharpened to the extreme can hope to counter such a subterfuge. Finally, instantaneous movements complete his arsenal. This art allows him to accelerate a single movement to a speed so lightning that it gives the illusion of a teleportation. Each step, each blow becomes a deadly fraction of seconds, rendering Hakurou as ungraspable as a shadow. When the threat of the orcs fell upon the great forest of Jura, Hakurou, the legendary swordsman, did not remain in the background. Plunged into the melee, he transformed the battlefield into a spectacle of deadly precision. His blade, extension of his will, danced with a grace implacable, cutting the orcs into pieces like a sculptor carving the marble. Each blow was a masterpiece, carried with an economy of movements that betrayed decades of mastery. But Hakurou did not content himself with triumphing by the steel. Facing the orcs whose voracity pushed them to devour their own allies, to appropriate their forces, he deployed Deadly Will. An incandescent aura burst from him, enveloping the enemy corpses in purifying flames, reducing to ashes any possibility of recovery. This was not only a tactical victory, but a demonstration of his profound understanding of combat, where every detail counted. This prowess, combined with his virtuosity in the arts and his unequaled handling of the sword, convinced Rimuru to entrust to Hakurou a central role in the Federation of Tempest. He was named official military instructor, charged with forging the warriors of a nascent nation. But Rimuru, always avid to learn, did not content himself with delegating this task to him. He became the first student of Hakurou, or, to be more precise, his first victim. The training sessions were trials of endurance as much as of learning. Rimuru, despite his colossal power, recounted with a touch of humor how Hakurou manhandled him for hours, his implacable blade correcting each error with a rigor almost cruel. His sessions, far from being simple lessons, were baptisms of fire, where the student learned in pain the value of discipline. Hakurou did not delay in enlarging his circle of victims. Gobuta and the Goblin Riders, temerarious but inexperienced, joined the ranks of his students, discovering at their expense the severity of their masters. After the victory against the Orc disaster, the Federation of Tempest enriched itself with new allies, and with them new recruits for Hakurou, Gabiru and his servants, followed by Yum and his group. Then Grucius, the subordinate of Carrion, with fiery temperaments, were all submitted to the infernal training of Hakurou. Each one, in his own way, was shaped by the iron discipline of the swordsman, learning that brute force was not sufficient in the face of technique. Even Shuna, whose sweetness seemed distant from the battlefields, received lessons of jujutsu to defend herself, while Shion, too often guided by her crushing power, was initiated to the importance of finesse and strategy in hand-to-hand combat. Later, when the otherworlder children found refuge in Tempest, they became themselves also the students of Hakurou, their young spirits absorbing the rudiments of his art. The influence of Hakurou extends well beyond his era. 300 years before the events of Tempest, he crossed the path of a young Dworgen gazer, whom he trained in the art of the sword. This disciple, far from being ordinary, would become later the legendary Hero King, a mythical figure whose exploits still resonate. Forming such a character testifies to the durable impact of Hakurou, whose lessons transcend generations. But even a master like Hakurou is not invincible. During the attack of the Kingdom of Farmus against Tempest, he confronted Kyoya Tachibana, another worlder with redoubtable skills. Weakened by an anti-magic barrier that hindered his capacities, Hakurou suffered a humiliating defeat. Yet this loss was only a setback. Once recovered, he found Kyoya again for a second duel, and this time the outcome was radically different. Thanks to Celestial Eye, a sub-skill of his new unique skill Martial Master, Hakurou anticipated each movement of his adversary. The attacks of Kyoya, formerly menacing, crashed against an impenetrable defense. When he attempted a close approach, Hakurou activated instantaneous movement, disappearing in a flash. In less than 1 second, his technique-veiled cutting wave or crestwater slash descended, decapitating Kyoya with a clean blow. This combat, of a lightning brevity, illustrated the crushing superiority of Hakurou when he was at his apogee. His sharpened intuition manifested itself again during another critical moment. While Geld was preparing to finish off Shogo Taguchi, Hakurou detected a trap magic orchestrated by the sorcerer Razan. In a lightning rapidity, he stopped Geld just in time, saving his ally from a certain death. This capacity to read the battlefield, to anticipate invisible dangers, makes Hakurou much more than a simple fencer. He is a strategist, a guardian whose vigilance protects those who surround him. During the Harvest Festival of Rimuru, a marking event where the Chosen received divine gifts, Hakurou was blessed by the voice of the world. He acquired the unique skill Martial Master, an arsenal of 5 sub-skills that sublimes his talents. Celestial Eye confers on him a supernatural perception, surpassing even magic sense. This aptitude allows him to detect the flows of magical energy, to analyze the force of his adversaries, and to predict their movements with a precision quasi-prophetic. Thought acceleration multiplies his mental processing speed by 1,000, transforming each second into an eternity where he can calculate and react with an unequaled clarity. Ultra acceleration, an amplified version of instantaneous movements, offers him even more spectacular speed boosts, rendering his displacements almost indiscernible. Future Sight grants him a limited form of prescience, allowing him to anticipate the future in specific conditions, although subjected to constraints. Finally, Mystery, probably an evolution of Haze, perfects his capacity to render himself undetectable, effacing his presence to the point of becoming an ungraspable specter. In complement, Hakurou masters several additional skills that reinforce his arsenal. Magic Sense allows him to perceive the surrounding energies. Multi-layer barrier erects an invisible defense composed of several strata. Steel Strength increases his physical robustness, and Danger Sense alerts him in the face of imminent threats. But beyond his skills, a joke circulates among the inhabitants of Tempest. Hakurou would enter God mode as soon as one treats him as an old man, a quip that hides the admiration for his eternal vigor. Unfortunately, after his exploits, Hakurou fades progressively from the narrative spotlights. His role concentrates on the deepening of his past and of his character. For example, after the attack of Farmus, he was sent with Sui and Shuna to infiltrate the domain of the demon Lord Clayman. There he confronted the Death Knight Albert, who was without name at that moment, but the combat did not conclude, Shuna having vanquished the Revenant King responsible before a conclusion was attained. Subsequently, Hakurou remained in large part absent, charged with surveilling the lands of Clayman, a mission that kept him away from the major events. A fascinating detail emerges nevertheless. Hakurou is a father. The Queen of the Tengu, Kaidi, was once a student of Byakuya Araki, training alongside Hakurou. After a series of events not detailed, she gave birth to Momiji, the daughter of Hakurou. This revelation, although discreet, adds a layer of humanity to a character often perceived as an untouchable master. When the Eastern Empire launched its offensive against Tempest, Hakurou was recalled to serve as military advisor of the First Legion, composed of the Goblin Riders and the Green Numbers. under the command of Gobuta. His role was principally strategic, guiding the troops with a sharpened wisdom. However, he did not resist the call of combat. Plunging into the melee, he mowed down the Imperial soldiers with a disconcerting ease. When he crossed a member of the Imperial Guardians, ranked 97th, the man did not even have the time to present himself. The blade of Hakurou had already reduced him to silence, a testimony to his implacable lethality. After the victory against the Empire, Rimuru organized a ceremony to reward his faithful. Some, judged worthy, were awakened into true demon lords. Hakurou, although exceptional, did not fill the criteria for this ascension. As a token of recognition, he received a legendary weapon forged by Kurobe, a masterpiece at the height of his talent. The greatest challenge of Hakurou occurred during the second attack of the Eastern Empire, where he confronted Lieutenant Kondo, an otherworlder linked to the lineage of Byakuya Araki. Kondo, having learned the rudiments of the Oboro Ryu up to Gokatotsu, represented a formidable adversary. Although Hakurou surpassed Kondo in technical mastery, the difference in raw power and the physical capabilities of Kondo, amplified by an ultimate skill, dug an insurmountable gap. In a dramatic exchange, Kondo used Gokatotsu to counter Yayazakura, the supreme technique of Hakurou, proving that brute force could sometimes eclipse the finesse. Despite his defeat, Hakurou gained the respect of Kondo, a remarkable feat facing an adversary capable of slaying a true dragon like Veldora. After the fall of the Empire, Hakurou faded again, his role limiting to sporadic appearances. An intriguing revelation emerged nevertheless. Carrera, the Yellow Primordial, revealed that Agera, one of her subordinates, was the reincarnation of Byakuya Araki, the grandfather of Hakurou. This connection, although underexplored, adds a mystical dimension to his heritage. With an existence value of 60,000, Hakurou remains a formidable adversary, capable, according to Rimuru, of triumphing over enemies several times more powerful thanks to his technique.